Welcome to the third installment in our six-part series on transforming your business into a high-performance money machine using the Small Business Data Analysis Roadmap. My name is Rob Fernango, founder and owner of F1 Analytics, and I help energetic business people organize and streamline their critical processes to save time and achieve more success without having to become an expert analyst or coder. That's why I developed the Small Business Data Analysis Roadmap to help you turn your business into a high-performance money machine in 6 simple steps. If you haven't read my report, then be sure to get over to our website to download it now. The link is in the description section below. By signing up, you'll get my 36-page Small Business Data Analysis Roadmap absolutely free. You'll also get the tools shown in this video series for free so you can use them with the report and start making changes that impact your life immediately. Now let's go ahead and get into it. In the last video, we developed a short list of key performance indicators, or KPIs, that could be useful in monitoring your business processes when making quality improvements. In step 3, it's time to unleash your inner superpower and pull together a list of all the data sources and data elements you have available for capturing and calculating these KPIs. After all, KPIs are designed to provide you with really useful information, but if you don't have the data available to calculate the metric, then it won't help you much. Knowing what data you have available and from which data sources will provide you with the informational foundation to make decisions about which KPIs you can calculate now, which KPIs you need to collect more data elements for, and what other potential KPIs you may not have considered previously, but that could be useful since you already have the data available. This is where we begin whittling down the list of KPIs and begin moving toward a more definitive list of metrics for your quality improvement dashboard. To help organize the information on data elements and data sources, I've developed an Excel workbook called the Data Audit Worksheet, or DAW. This workbook will help you catalog up to 50 different data elements from up to 20 data sources for use in calculating your KPIs. There's a paper version of the workbook that you'll receive with this download, but we're going to focus on the Excel workbook in this video. There are 3 worksheets in the workbook: instructions, the DAW template, and terms and conditions. The instructions worksheet provides written instructions on how to set up the workbook for your business processes. The process for setting up the DAW workbook is the same as we use for the process map worksheet and the KPI list worksheet. Begin by listing each process in the process table in the instruction sheet. The process name should be 31 characters or less for the links in the workbook to work. If you need more than 10 processes, you can unprotect the workbook and expand the table as shown in the previous videos. You'll also need to make a copy of the DAW template worksheet for each business process, also shown in previous videos. I've included examples for our sales, production, and product development processes in the DAW sample workbook. The DAW template has 3 sections to fill out: the header to list the business process and date of documentation, a data sources table to compile a list of data sources in the business relevant to that specific business process, and a data elements table used to compile information about the data elements already being captured in the business that could be used for calculating the KPIs. The data elements table includes the name of the data element and its data source, either as a typed name or using the numbers from above in the data sources list. The table also includes the process step associated with when the data element is collected. This is useful for aligning the data elements with the KPIs if they need to come from specific points in your process. Finally, I've included the format for the data available. For example, this could be a CSV file or an Excel file, a database query, or a Word document, depending on how the data is being collected. You'll just have to type in whatever that format is so you understand it. As we move into the examples, I need to stress that the data sources and data elements obtained from those sources are very likely to be different in your business. You may not have these same data sources available, and that's okay. You might be collecting data in a different manner, and that's fine. At this point, our primary goal is simply to identify all of the available data sources you have and to identify the data elements available from those data sources. Importantly, the names of these data elements will probably be different in your data sources. If that's the case, just make sure that you review each data element carefully so that you understand what each data element represents. We'll start with the sales process as a simple example. In the sample DAW workbook, I've included the type of information I would capture on this worksheet. You'll see that I'm keeping this simple by only including two data sources, a customer relationship management or CRM tool and my accounting software. The CRM is a critical piece of the puzzle for the sales funnel because this data source is typically used to keep track of where your leads are in the process of making a sale. From that perspective, we've got all the contact information for our leads while prospecting in the CRM. We also maintain the results from our lead scoring algorithm during the qualifying step of the process. We know who we've made first contact with, as well as whether we have sent them any collateral or made any follow-up contacts to nurture the prospect. Finally, we also have an indication of whether or not we closed the sale with a particular lead, and any comments or notes that could be useful. A good CRM really provides a huge amount of information that can be used to calculate KPIs for the sales process and shouldn't be overlooked. Maybe you don't have a CRM software per se, but are tracking this information in a simpler manner using paper and pen and a filing system for organization. That's fine if you are. The point is to understand what you have and how you might be able to connect it to the KPIs you're thinking about calculating. I've also included some additional data sources as relevant for the KPIs in the sales process. Specifically, I'm looking at how we might track our current sales volume and sales revenue, as well as year-over-year metrics. Maybe you have this in the sales database that's connected to your CRM, and that's fine if you do. But perhaps the most accurate place to find this information will be in the accounts receivable components or revenue transactions in your accounting software. Here we're tracking customer contact information as well as invoiced amounts, discounts, dates, terms, any payments received, and any outstanding amounts. These data elements can be helpful not only in identifying the sales volumes and revenues, but also understanding which types of clients order most frequently, which make payments in a timely manner, and which may be slower to pay or order less frequently. There's so much that can be done with these data. I've got to limit myself here to stay on track. So let's get back to the data elements in the sales process. Let's say that this is all of the data I'm capturing about my sales process on a regular basis. So now what do? Well, compiling a list of data sources and data elements like this will help you determine whether you have all of the necessary data elements to calculate the KPIs from your KPI list for the sales process. If we review the sales KPI example, we can see whether we have the data elements needed to calculate the specific KPIs we want to track. For example, there are several KPIs where we need to know how many qualified leads we had during a time period. When you look at the data sources and data elements list, we don't have a data element called qualified lead. But we do have the lead scoring results in the lead score data element from the qualifying step of the process. From this, we should be able to identify the number of qualified leads we put into the sales funnel. You may have more qualified leads than your sales team can contact, so perhaps this isn't the best data element to use. As an alternative, we also have whether the lead was contacted in the making contact step of the process. Since this is definitive proof that the lead was qualified, we might choose to use this as the measure of qualified leads. This would work well for the qualified lead conversion rate, where we would need to know how many leads we have and how many are being converted. For the next KPI on the list, the percent of qualified leads that fit, we would also need to have the number of qualified leads and the number that entered the nurturing step of the process. Looking at the process map for the sales process, you can see that the nurturing step comes after the initial contact, where some qualified leads are dropped from the funnel because it simply isn't a good fit for them or for us. We track whether the lead was contacted during the making contact step, as well as whether the lead was sent collateral material. If they were sent collateral materials, that indicates they were moved forward into the nurturing portion of the sales funnel. So this can serve as our data element representing leads entering nurturing. This is just one example of how to link your KPI list worksheet to the data audit worksheet and think carefully about what you're able to measure using the data you have available. So let's look at the production process. In the production process, I identified 4 specific data sources that play a role and 30 different data elements. In the DAW for the production process, I indicate the data source using the associated number of the data source. And there's conditional formatting to color code the values, making it easier to identify them in the data element table. So this is one option you can use for listing out the data source instead of having to type out that data source every single time. In the production process, we want to focus our KPIs on defect rates, throughput time, and proper procurement. As a reminder, we see here in our KPI list worksheet, we had the defect rate, throughput time, vendor rejection rate, vendor rejection costs, projection runs without procurement, and emergency purchase ratio. Looking at the DAW, we have all the inventory order information available in the procurement system. So we want to know what and how much has been ordered from which vendors and how long it takes to receive those orders. We also have data from the prep and assembly step in the process, such as which products are being produced, how many were ordered, and how many are in each stage of the process. For QA, we capture how many units of a specific product SKU were tested, what test was performed, and how many units were defective. Finally, we're capturing the start and end time for the production run, which can be used for our throughput time KPI. Now, if we look back at the KPI list, you'll find that we included KPIs for capturing vendor rejection rate and vendor rejection costs. But from the list of data sources and data elements, we don't seem to have anything that captures the vendor rejection rate when we order inventory. Assuming that this is not also being captured in the QA system, this points to a gap in our data systems. We won't be able to calculate that KPI unless we begin capturing information on how much inventory is rejected from our vendors. If we know the amount of rejected inventory, we should be able to calculate the cost of the rejected inventory by using the order price to identify the cost of the rejected units. If these KPIs are important to our initial quality improvement efforts, then we'll need to put some work into developing a way to capture and store data on vendor rejection rates and costs. Now let's move on. We should be okay to capture our defect rate and throughput time based on the available data. We have the start and end times for production runs, and the QA system is capturing the number of defective units and number of units tested. Note that QA processes may be quite different depending on sales volume. Perhaps you do low volumes of very expensive and customized product. You might want to inspect every product carefully then to identify and fix any defects before presenting to the customer. In contrast, you might have high volume manufacturing of less expensive items. Rather than inspecting each product individually, which takes time and money, you might choose to test a smaller sample of products and then extrapolate to the larger production run. For example, you might have a production run of 10,000 units of a product. To save time and money, you draw a random sample of 100 units to test for defects, finding that 2 units have problems. That's a defect rate of 2 out of 100 or 2% in the sample. Now, to figure out how many units you expect to have returned by customers due to defects, you extrapolate that 2% to a larger production run. So 10,000 times 2% is 200 defective units. Now, this is only an estimate, and you would expect the actual number of defective units to vary from 200. I don't want to get into the analytics right now of how far your estimate might be off. Instead, I want to focus on the concept that now you have an idea of how many refunds you would expect to give and can plan accordingly. Also, if this defect rate is too high, you can focus on improving your production process to reduce the defect rate. It's also important to note, in this example, that the KPI list for the production process also includes the defect rate calculated using the total number of defects over the total number of units. That's fine as a definition, and as we've seen, maybe your production volume is low enough to check every unit produced. But once you get to higher volumes of production, you may need to take a sample to calculate your defect rate, and then apply that defect rate to the larger production run. This won't be exact, but should get you close to the number you need. From this perspective, we can calculate the defect rate for production, but we would also want to know how far off our estimate might be. This is called the error rate. In this case, the error rate of the defect rate would be used to help understand how accurate our estimate of the defect rate might be. In the end, while we can still calculate the defect rate as a KPI, if we need to sample units because of larger production volumes, then we're also going to want to have the error of the estimated defect rate as well. These examples should help demonstrate the importance of taking stock of the information you have available to you already. To make the most of your quality improvement strategy and eliminate inefficiencies in your business, you'll need to understand the data you have available, how it relates to your KPIs you want to measure, and any gaps between the available data and the KPIs you want. If you have gaps with data elements that are not available, you can devise ways to capture the information so that you can begin calculating the KPIs you want to measure. In many ways, this step in the small business data analysis roadmap is really a quality improvement process in and of itself, taking stock of your data, determining what can and cannot be done with it, and coming up with ways to improve your data systems to capture the data elements you want. I want to stress here that no system is perfect, and you don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So if you're not able to calculate all of the KPIs you want right away, that's fine. Continue on with the process in the roadmap and work toward making your business more efficient. You don't want to get bogged down trying to capture every data element you think you want in precisely the way you want it, because it can hold you back from making other important improvements. Rather, make a list of the data elements you want to capture and set a time aside after you get your KPI dashboard up and running to figure out how you'll go about capturing those new data elements. After reviewing this video and the sample data analysis workbook, you should be ready to begin unleashing the power of the data you already have in your business by identifying which data elements you have that can be used to calculate the KPIs on your list. Now, in the next video, we're going to extend this one step further to consider what analytic tools you already have available in your business and which KPIs they might already be providing that you can easily use in your quest to streamline operations and increase profitability. If you haven't read the 6 simple steps to turn your business into a high-performance money machine, then be sure to click the link in the description below to get my 36-page small business data analysis roadmap and all of the tools shown in this video series absolutely free so you can get started immediately. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.